Cool. Simon Bridges.
The Legal Services Bill reforms the legal aid system, and let's say from the outset that, of course, I believe certainly that because the state is bringing charges in criminal cases, there absolutely should be legal aid for those who can't afford can't afford representation. There's perhaps a slightly different situation that pertains to family law cases where it may not be the state bringing them, and so you may have some slightly different considerations there. But basically, and certainly in the criminal courts, I feel very strongly that legal aid is a fundamental part of our system, because without it, people who don't have the means don't get fair trials. But it's worth saying that, look, that there are caveats around that, and it's not legal aid at any cost and without any reference to the kind of quality and the assurances that perhaps you should get in place with counsel providing it. And, I say it's not at any cost because some lawyers will say actually that legal aid or that court cases should be at any cost. Cost is an irrelevant factor, and I don't think actually as politicians and as this parliament here we should say that. Actually, the fact of the matter is we absolutely need justice in this country and fair trials in this country, but justice and the justice system lines up against hip-hops, and I don't mean the kind of hip-hops Carmel Sepuloni would necessarily talk about, but hip operations and also education and things in our schools, and they line up against that in the system, trials and trial rights with those, because there's not a bottomless pit. Now, Carmel Sepuloni may think there is, but we don't think that. And so we have to be careful with our money. And we heard in our select committee about lawyers, counsel, who at category 1 and 2 level, so low-level criminal law and criminal cases, were earning several hundreds of thousands of dollars churning those through. They weren't doing the hard stuff. And I think most reasonable New Zealanders would say, and Dame Margaret Baisley essentially said in her report, that's not on. And we accept that, look, anyone who works hard and per hour can get to a position where they earn good money. But when it's at $400,000, $500,000, actually even $600,000 to do low-level criminal cases, something seems strange. And indeed, some of the calculations I think we talked about in our select committee made it quite clear that they were putting through what seemed like strangely large numbers of people. And so we're changing things in that regard. We're not allowing costs to spiral out of control, because, as I say, we've also got to make sure we have good hospitals, we have strong schools, and we have these other social goods in our society. And the other thing I would say when we're looking at this in the round is it's very, very important that if the state is paying, and as I've said right from the start, they must pay where people cannot afford good counsel in court, they actually should be good counsel. The quality of legal advice and the quality of counsel that someone's getting matters, because they are receiving very good money. I think off the top of my head, legal aid rates are around $160-something. And so we have had that's senior counsel, is it? About 160, 165. Well, I would have been senior counsel if I was doing it, Chester, but that's by the by. So you do want to get away from that car boot lawyer, from actually I think some ethics issues. And so we are, I think, putting in assurances, more testing, more competency tests for counsel, and that's got to be a very good thing indeed. Finally, can I just say a word or two about preferred counsel, because we had quite some discussions about this, and look, I had some concerns at the start, but I think in the end we've come up with a very good solution where there is not preferred counsel for the low-level cases, and yet there will be for the higher-level cases. And I could say a lot more about that, but I think we've struck a good balance there, one that meets all the sort of requirements I've already talked about. And we've got ultimately a system that hopefully will be less about and less for the lawyers and actually more for the accused who are up on charges, and more for the victims and the community. So it's not about those earning money from the system, but actually those who don't want to be in the system but are. And we, reforming legal aid, a crucial part in the justice system in quite a number of good ways in this bill.